Welcome to the Jazz Flyte Podcast. I'm your host, Daryl Scott, and together we will dive into the lives and careers of the jazz legends who have left a rhythmic imprint on the world. Be prepared to reminisce on the highs and the lows of their musical journey and the trials that sculpted their timeless musical gems. We'll preserve the legacy of these extraordinary maestros and find inspiration in the melodies of their lives. Subscribe now and never miss a beat. Now, let's get to the show. Welcome to the Jazz Flyte Podcast. I'm Daryl Scott. I'll get to that gentleman over there in a minute, but he's played with and worked with Kirk Whalum, Bob James, Larry Carlton, David Benoit, so many more. I could take the next 422 days and come up with a list of people that he has performed with. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Roberto Valley. Roberto, how are you?
I am better than most, not as good as some, brother. I'm happy to be sharing some time with you on this rainy day here in Los Angeles. I'm actually going back to my hometown in a couple of days. I have a show tomorrow night with Jessy J.
Oh, I'm trying to get a hold of her. So to let her know that this guy that you did the show with is trying to get a hold of her so she can do
Done.
the podcast.
Yeah.
So my thing now is it's all referrals.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Which is
put your name in. I'll see her tomorrow. We just
okay.
had a killer band, and actually I played on a lot of her early hits from Tequila Moon and Tropical Rain and Hot Sauce. That's all me laying the booty down for her. Yeah. And then I'm in New York City, and I'll be there not to play. I'm just there to see my family. I have my mother, my departed mom, and her sister and brother are still alive. And so I try to go, whether I'm playing in New York, I'll try to make a detour and see them. This time I'm just going just because I can. So
right.
I'll be about a week, and then I'll be back. And I have shows with David Benoit and many others, and we'll talk about that, later.
I'm always interested in how the schedule works out when you are in one place. I talked to a young lady who lives in LA. She's coming here to Cleveland, but she only plays concerts on the weekends because she's a administrative assistant Monday through Friday.
Wow, yeah.
And she says, I fly out like on a Friday. She says, there's been occasions when she goes, I'm getting ready to go on stage and my phone rings and it's business. I go, so what do you do? She goes, it wasn't a long call, so I got it all taken care of. I don't envy that part of your life. So let's do this. You are a bass player. When did you start playing the bass and who influenced you?
Okay, well, I got into music, I guess, as soon as I was able to walk to my parents' stereo. And I was just fascinated. Maybe I was and still am on the spectrum a little bit, but I would just love to watch the vinyl just turn around,
spin around.
And it was like, I guess my early vinyl that I listened to like at 3-4 years old was like my dad's opera records, and like kind of pop music from Italy at the time, where it was kind of introducing the kind of backbeat, thing that we're kind of hearing, now. It was, evolving from, like this song Al Di La. I remember that as a kid. So anyway, I started playing piano and a little guitar at home. I had piano lessons. I had a little folk guitar, non-on-string thing, and I dug the piano. Okay, it wasn't anything that I really felt a deep connection to. Third grade, they tested the whole grade,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe 200 kids were in each grade in my elementary school. Happened to grow up in Brooklyn
Mm-hmm.
with a strong PTA, and the arts pushed the arts big time in the late 60s. Okay, so they tested the third grade for like an ear aptitude thing because they were going to pick out of those 200 kids a class of 40 that would be the orchestra class.
Right.
So word has it that they called my mom and they said, your son got a perfect score. He has very good ears. We'd like to put him in the orchestra. My mom was like, hey, if it keeps him out of trouble,
Right.
fire away. And I kind of wanted to do it also because one of my older friends was in the orchestra and he played bass. His name was Caesar Giuliani. He went on to become Mr. Teenage America
Okay.
later on. But anyway, I joined the orchestra in the fourth grade, and from the first day when they asked, "Does anybody know what they want to play?" and I was just like, "Hello, I know." Well, what do you want? Says, and I pointed to the rack. There was a rack of 4 stand-up basses
Mm-hmm.
side by side in the rack. And I said, I want to play one of those. So the teacher got me up. I remember this like it was yesterday.
Right.
Actually, he got me up in front of the class. I played the open strings. He said, play the 2 top strings. Doom, 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 doom. Anyway, he said, okay, while Robert's doing that class, we're going to sing Frere Jacques.
Mm-hmm.
And so he says, keep doing that. Don't stop. And so I'm like, okay, doom, doom, doom. And they're singing Frere Jacques, Frere Jacques. And I'm doom, doom, doom. And I was doing that. I just said, man, so cool how my 2 notes are working with that melody. And that's when I kind of got bass conscious at
Mm-hmm.
6 digits. I was 9 years old. Yeah, I didn't really even, I didn't really know what procreating was about. I mean, and so I had no other motivation but the love of music, and I really loved what the bass was doing
Mm-hmm.
in the sound, what it did in the musical context of laying that foundation down for people to be on top. And I just I found it's like I met my long lost friend,
Wow.
with a
Wow.
stand-up bass, and then went on as school progressed, playing in the orchestra, and then playing with my friends at home, playing pop music at the time, whether it was Santana, Kool and the Gang.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the bands that I cut my teeth on.
Okay.
Kool and the Gang, Santana, Chicago, Blood, Sweat and Tears, Earth, Wind and Fire, and I went to the famous High School of Music and Art in New York City, and that was huge eye opener with 2,000 of the best musicians and artists all over New York City, with the likes of Marcus Miller and people like that went there, and Alicia Keys went to my school much later than I did.
Right.
It was the LaGuardia School. They merged music and art and performing arts together to make like one super school in Manhattan. So I hope I didn't elaborate too much,
No,
but
that's fine. It's very interesting.
good question.
I will go this way. So not only do you play the upright bass, but you
Mhm.
play the electric bass also.
Yeah, yeah,
How,
yeah.
is there a difference? Because I mean, I've seen people and I know many people that play both, but I've always wanted to know it's different. But what is the difference to somebody who's playing it?
Okay. Well, you have physical differences, and then you have the playing differences because of the physicality of it.
Right.
With most bass guitars, the string length is 34 inches.
Hmm.
Where with a string bass, it's not much longer, but it's going to be like 41, 42 inches.
Right.
So the strings are the same. I was very fortunate that I had 2 years of upright bass before I even had a bass guitar in my hand. So
Mm-hmm.
in a way, the bass guitar, it felt very, very natural to me coming from a little bit of folk guitar, like, okay, you put, and bass fiddle, where you put your finger on the string and you pluck and boom, there's the note. So it almost felt like a toy, but I embraced both. And I think that part of my attraction for other people who hire me as a bassist is the fact that I come from a deep, deep pool of different musical styles growing up in New York,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and being exposed and being classically trained with the bow, and listening to a lot of jazz and listening to a lot of soul and Latin music and rock and roll and everything in between, reggae from the Caribbean and different music from the Caribbean, Trinidadian music, and I'm not going to play salsa like a guy who was raised in San Juan, Puerto
Right.
Rico, but I have the concept, and I also have all those other styles in my bag, so I may put a different little spin on it. But getting back to the difference between electric bass and the upright bass, it's also all about conceptual. Like when you a lot of electric players who grew up in the church, or who played rock and roll, try to learn upright, and then you're talking about a different animal. A
Right.
lot, and to the other point, where a lot of people that were classically trained and then they play an upright bass, they might have the facility to play, but they have no concept of feel or groove or time or
Mm.
whatever. So that has to be developed as much as your technique is knowing what to do. For me, I'll play Led Zeppelin on the upright. I don't care. I'm like, as ambidextrous as it comes, and I think that that's what puts me in another echelon with people like Brian Bromberg and others who do both, uh, um, and you hear them and you believe them.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes any
It
sense.
makes a lot of sense. So I find it amazing. I was having a conversation with somebody, and we talked about the word genius. Um, and I think we equate genius with something written. Um, but I go, sometimes basketball players are geniuses because how they can move and get around somebody and get the ball between people is genius.
Hmm.
But when you play, granted, you may have the notes in front of you, it might be there on paper. The genius is adapting your playing to whatever format you're playing for.
Right.
So and I always think that it appears to be that the bass player is always the coolest person in the band
Hmm.
because they don't stand still. They have
Right.
some kind of rhythm to them,
Right.
and it's just like they're fun people to talk to. I've talked to a couple. I still have a couple on my list that I want to get to,
Hmm.
but I can sit in my seat and watch them the entire show
Right.
because number one, it's not like you get a break either. You're the rhythm section, so you
Yeah.
have to keep playing song after song after song. So I always worry about your endurance. Are you working out 3 times a week so that you can one stand for a 2 hour show? Are you working your arms, your hands? Do you have fingerprints if you're playing with your fingers? What? Tell me about
Uh,
that.
yeah. Well, there's a lot of answers there. I'll start back, backwards. Well, fingers. I've been using these fingers, this one's to press down on the strings here.
Hmm.
This one to pluck, slap, and hold a bow. So they definitely have their set of calluses, but I actually sand them down sometimes with some sandpaper or file, just to make them. But if people feel my hands, they're very smooth. Maybe it's the Italian olive oil, seeping out of my pores. Um, but as far as working out and playing, I'm sporty. I don't really do that for my bass playing. It
Hmm.
probably helps, but you just do it for so long, and I'm still at the point where that even though I'm approaching the later years of my life, I'm peering into like, whoa, man, what about if I wasn't physically able to like load a bass into my car? Like,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, so those thoughts have crept into my mind. So, I wake up every morning now to the demand of my youngest daughter and said, Dad, you got to do yoga every day.
Right.
And
Yes.
I there's a girl on YouTube that I watch. Her name, well, her yoga name is Bird. So I watch yoga with Bird,
Yes.
and I call her Puckerfish because she's got these collagen lips. And me and my lady friend will watch Puckerfish, and we'll do like 15 minutes, and it really helps in
Right.
terms of my back and me feeling more agile. And I think that even like I feel more my age when I'm surfing than when I'm playing the bass, just laying on a board on your belly and paddling and trying to stand up on this, board.
Wow.
Uh, I go, man, I'm not in my 20s anymore,
Right.
but I'm still doing it. I'm still kicking, and I still enjoy it. So it kind of works hand in hand. I think, and there's the other thing that people talk about, and I believe it. Like the music makes you young.
Right. Yes.
I think you can subtract some of the time on the planet when you're on your surfboard or when you're playing, and the spiritual part of playing with people. You just have these shows or the moments in the show where I really feel close to my God, to my creator. Like I'm not even playing the music. The music is kind of playing me. It's just channeling through me.
Right.
But that has a certain um, healing and purification, if you will.
Nice.
If
All right.
into crazy.
Okay. We're going to take a break here and listen to some music that you play. Some
Hmm.
songs that I actually use. So let's listen to. Excuse me. I don't know why that always happens when I'm doing the show. Let's listen to Jazz Trance on the Jazz Flyte Podcast with Roberto Valley. Welcome back to the Jazz Flyte Podcast. I'm Daryl Scott. He is Roberto Valley. We just heard Jazz Trance on this show. Roberto, I only know part of your resume because it's a long resume, but you
Yeah.
spent some time with Spyro Gyra and then you go to Michael Franks.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of both, but
Yes.
I think they're two different styles.
Mhm.
Frank is kind of the whispery, soft vocals, blah, 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 objects of desire, things like that. Well, Spyro Gyra is a bit more energetic. How do you adjust between the two and still keep your style?
That's a great question. Part of being a professional, a musician, is knowing what to play and when to play.
Mhm.
And so uh, when I played with Spyro, I kind of put that hat on, and then when I played with Michael, I played with that hat on, and prior to those two bands, artists that I worked with, I played with a lot of people. So I kind of look at it like we all collect a bag of musical pasts.
Mhm.
So you kind of assess the situation that you're in, and that's what I bring to this day to every recording session I have to do for somebody. Now I record for people all around the world. They send me their song. I record a few takes and I upload it, send it to them. So you are a sum total of all your experiences. It's the baggage, it's the musical baggage that we have, like in relationships and friendships. All of it collects, and hopefully it collects for a good thing, where you can borrow and you can take. So you have to play within the confines of the style and the artist that you're playing with. So for me, it was a natural thing to go from Spyro Gyra to Michael Franks, and then Michael Franks being basically my audition when I invited Mr. Bobby Caldwell to come to hear me play. And I mean, that was, you want to talk about, throwing yourself out there, and how divinity can come in. Like, what were the chances that my hero would come to hear me play and happen to be looking for a bass player?
Right.
And he comes up to me after the show. Bobby Caldwell comes up to me and just like, Roberto, you play so good. I enjoyed it so much. Hey, I'm going to do this tour in Japan, and Jimmy Haslip from the Yellow Jackets, he can't do it. And I'd love for you to be my bassist. And then the next day I'm sitting in his house smoking an enormous marijuana cigarette, listening to brand new Bobby Caldwell. And so all that I did with Spyro and Michael, it kind of went to playing, with Bobby, and then meeting Bobby. I get to meet Boz Scaggs, and I play with Boz, and I met Arturo Sandoval, the jazz trumpet player.
Right.
So it all just kind of snowballs. And again, if you want to work as a sideman, you have to be really good, and you have to know what not to play,
Right.
and play and listening, because God gave us two of these. Really listening to the surroundings, and not forcing things. Just let it come natural. Let it always be musical. So I hope that's answered your question.
Yeah, it is. Now, the one name you didn't mention that I saw, and I absolutely think she has one of the greatest voices ever, is Randy Crawford. What was it like playing with her? And I can't imagine Randy yelling. I can't, because that voice was so pure. Street Life, I got 4 or 5. Now We May Begin, Re-Illusion of Blue, and all that stuff is just so good.
Yeah.
But tell me about that experience.
Well, Randy, I would say, I mean, I played with a lot of people with a lot of interesting personalities. The good thing about Randy is that she never sang a bad note.
No.
Ever.
Right.
She was incapable. I never saw anybody with such a God-given gift. And actually getting to know her and be friends with her and going to her house, and she's playing me like a Cannibal Adderley record, and she's like 18 years old, singing, and she actually talked. They wanted her to talk like a Southern Negro girl, you know, and okay, well, it was great to hear her, a young Randy, talking, because she was originally from Augusta,
right,
and then moved to Ohio, and sang in the church, and all that. But even when she was 18 and she sang on Cannonball's record, it was just perfection.
Right.
It's like God kissed her voice, and some people, might not like the vibrato, or some people might not like her. But one thing I'll say to that girl, you hear 5 seconds, you go, well, that's Randy.
Right. Yes. Yes.
He has a unmistakable voice. The interesting thing about Randy, that she's still with us, and she suffered a stroke.
Yes.
After Joe Sample passed, and I did do some work with her after Joe died. We did a couple of tours in Europe, and that was the last time that I played with her. She's not really singing right now,
right?
But you never knew which Randy would show up to the show or to the lobby.
Right.
She had she had a lot of different moods. Let's just say,
Okay.
but on stage it was always magical, and she, again, never sang a bad note. Like she was incapable. Everything that came out of her mouth. I remember going to Michael Linton recording session, and she sang a Burt Bacharach song, uh, and my friend Peter Bonetta produced it, and I watched her sing, and she did a take. It was perfect. And I think they had her maybe do another one just for laughs.
Right.
But yeah, it was really amazing. I was her musical director, and we played literally probably thousands of shows all around the world. And I actually met my second wife on tour with her. So she's, kind of like a distant godmother to three of my kids, because I met their mother on tour in northern Norway, because of Randy, and took me to Australia and South Africa, all over Europe and Alaska, and the Persian Gulf, in Turkey, you name it. She was adored all over the world. 3 tours in South Africa.
Wow.
Just amazing. With we did one. I remember it was called Soul Invasion, and it was with Maxi Priest, the Stylistics, Kool and the Gang, and Randy. And I'll tell you, the hotel bar after the shows, and, there's Maxi, there's James, I forget
James Taylor, JT.
James Taylor from, with Kool, and Kool is there, and we're all there, drinking and partying together. It was so beautiful. Yeah.
Sounds great. We're going to take another pause and listen to some work that you have done. This is called, I'm just going to have fun saying this, Cool Like That, on the Jazz Flyte Podcast.
My latest single. Thanks.
That is Cool Like That from our guest on the Jazz Flyte Podcast, Mr. Roberto Valley. Roberto, you are an in-demand bass player.
Thank God.
How do you keep that reputation? You know what I mean? I mean, there's got to be a reason why people call you. What is that reason? What do you think the reason is?
Well, I think that they have heard me on enough records where they believe that I'll know what to do. I'll know what to play, and I'll know what, more importantly, what not to play. Yeah, I've done a lot of studio work for a guy who I have to give a lot of credit for teaching me a lot of stuff. We both joined Bobby's band together on the first tour in 1991. And there was incidentally a fellow by the name of Jim Oppenheim, who later became Boney
James, right?
Who was on that tour. But I'm talking about the man who mixed front of house, who was known as an engineer to Luther Vandross and others, by the name of Paul Brown. Paul met me through playing with Bobby, and Paul slowly, when he started producing Boney records, kind of tossed me a couple of bones, had me play on Boney's first album, then took a song I co-wrote with Boney on Boney's second album, and I slowly became Paul Brown's bassist of choice.
Right.
And then once I honed in my craft a little bit better, he started taking my songs and giving them out to Kirk Whalum, #1 Billboard single. Thank you very much. Now Till Forever. I co-wrote that. Bob James, Morning, Noon, and Night. I co-wrote that one, #1 Billboard single. I co-wrote Lip Service for Richard Elliott that went up to #1 on Billboard. So I know I kind of went from you asking me about, being a session player, why people hire me, just kind of showing you and your audience how I kind of went from session player to into co-writing, and it did seem like a natural progression. And then enough people, including Paul, saying, dude, when are you going to make your own album? And you played Jazz Trance. That was the first song on my first album that I put Roberto Valley when I didn't care about radio.
Right.
I was just stuck on this. How do I become an artist as a bass player and not sound like Marcus or Wayman Tisdale, rest his soul? And how do I drive the bus as a bass player? And my earlier albums were just about making really cool music with a really, really cool vibe. Didn't care about radio at all.
What is your inspiration for songwriting? Where do you get these songs from?
Sometimes I might hear something that I think, oh, I could maybe borrow an idea from there. Other times I'll just hear a drum groove, or I hear a bass line in my head. And things, I just maybe like fall into, certain things. Yeah, I get inspired from, many, many different things, but I guess just growing up and hearing a lot of Motown, and hearing a lot of bands like Chicago, if you will, and hearing a lot of funk and fusion. And I guess those things are just kind of like swimming around. And my net, if you will, my musical net, fishing net, might latch onto something like cool like that, ba-doom boom ba, ka-doom boom ba, ka-doom doo ba, boom, ba-doom boom ba. And I think, okay, that's a cool bass line. There's a song in there somewhere. So I just come up with this idea, and I'm thinking like, okay, well, I kind of like gotta keep expanding it,
right,
and then just kind of develop it. I've never gotten a song where I've like gotten, like Beethoven or Mozart, and I'm just writing it down. I'm just hearing it in my head. It usually starts out with the bass. Duh, I'm a bass player, so.
All right. Before we go, we talked about this before we started. You ski and surf. You live a dangerous life.
Well, I think there's more dangerous things you can do.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. People always talk about surfing like, oh man, but there are sharks, and I can go outside and get hit by a bus,
True. Yeah.
But I haven't skied in, probably over 10 years, but there was a time in my life where I did live in the Alps, and besides playing music at night, there wasn't much else to do than, throw skis on and go. And some of the happiest times in my life, being that, in that I was off the grid. I wasn't even paying, taxes. I was literally living hand to mouth, or kind of still am, but I meant like, my stuff was still like at mom and dad's house, and I just would go to France for 3 or 4 months, and then I'd go down to Florida and work there, drive my van up and do that. Yeah.
Wow.
So I still like to surf. Some of my happiest times is meeting my son who lives in San Diego, and I'll drive my daughters down, and we'll be in the water with your kids. If I guess if somebody loved to golf and they're golfing with their boy or their daughter,
right.
I've taken my girls, and not that I own a gun, but I do. I do like to shoot. I don't, but again, I don't own a gun. But it was my teenage daughter at the time. She was like 18. She goes, "Dad, I know Mom, wants to outlaw guns, but I really want to learn how to shoot. I overcome my fear of a firearm. I want to learn." So I said, well, you know what? We'll go have lessons, and you can just see what it's all about. And so
Right.
I've taken to the range, and they've enjoyed that. But I think that when you do other things that you're passionate about, it only helps music,
So,
So,
so what are you working on now? What's on the plate for what you got going on right now?
well, I'm working on a lot of things. I'm finishing up a single that's going to be released in the beginning of May. That is going to have my friend David Benoit, who I play with, wrote songs with him. That's going to come out in May. Just had a song put on the radio that I co-wrote and produced for Greg Chambers, called LA Sunset, and that got second most spins the week that it came out. And we just finished up another song for Greg for a single down the road. Just did something as a producer, co-writer with Jason Tipp, who's
Oh, yeah.
a great pianist. And most recently, I just sent the mix to a song that's going to be entitled Santiago for the great Najee,
Uh,
who heard my groove and said, "Dude, that's I want to make that song mine. I want that to be my next single." So we're just finishing up that. I'm going to be working with a Japanese gal who plays saxophone. Her name is Michio. I'm going to be working on a single with her. So that's what's coming out. I'm kind of becoming Mr. Producer,
don't
and I a lot,
don't get me wrong.
a lot.
When do you have time? I just it's like one thing after another. My last question. A bunch
Yes.
of people out there have heard you and heard this interview, but want to follow you. What is your social media presence?
My social media, well, probably the best way to follow me would either be on Facebook because I'm old school, or Instagram because I think everything that I post goes on Instagram. You can follow me like that. That's more current, but I do have a website, robertovalley.com.
Hmm.
Yeah, and there's information how to contact me directly if they want to send me an email. I do have my one of my CDs for sale. Maybe all of them might be for sale, but usually people buy my Tranquilla CD online, and then they write to me and then say, "Hey, well, if you have anything else, I'd like to maybe purchase it." That way. Yeah, I guess I could be better with the whole social media thing, but as per your point, I'm so busy. But what's nice is, like, if I'm taking a break from touring, then I'll go in the studio and I'll start writing. So I kind of knew that I had this gap in this first quarter of 2025. So I did something with Greg Chambers, did something with Jason Tipp, finishing up something with Najee, and I have a few other irons in the fire, with that. So yeah,
So
um,
let me
you can reach
let
me at vally.com, or rpvalley, Vally, at AOL.com. If people want to reach out to me, directly, yeah, I'm here. I'm an open book.
let's do this because, like I said before, we could talk till the cows come home,
I know.
and the cows ain't even in the neighborhood.
I
I appreciate the time.
in the distance, but
You are. It's interesting. There are a lot of people. I've talked to a lot of jazz people, but there are some that are far more interesting and have more interesting life and a more interesting journey and so forth and so on. And you are one of those. If nothing else, your energy is infectious.
oh
There,
man, thank
there are those of us who need that. When you talk to somebody, you kind of need you want them to be, I'll call it a battery, and then you just want to plug in and take and
yeah,
basically steal their energy.
you
So
know,
go ahead.
yeah. No, I would just say that probably the biggest thing that people tell me when they watch me play, and I have no idea because it ain't choreographed at all, but people just said, "Man, I wish you would have a good time when you play." But they're joking, of course.
Right.
But
Yeah.
people always say to me, if I've heard it once, I've heard it 1,000 times, like, "You look like you're having so much fun," and it's because I am. I really
Yeah.
feel blessed every time I do a live show, whether it's with Jessy J or Paul Brown or David Benoit or all
Yeah.
the other people that I've worked with. And I like to take that energy of a live show, bring that in the studio.
Right.
Also, I like to take the precision and the discipline of working in the recording studio to the live stage.
Right.
Myself, when I'm doing a live show, that they're recording it for an album.
Right.
So those two things are working together. But anyway, I'll shut up.
That's all right, man. I greatly appreciate this. Let's wrap this up. So
Sure.
thanks to our guest, Roberto Valley. Thanks for being on the show, man. This was tremendously interesting. You've been listening to the Jazz Flyte Podcast. Need to reach me? You can email me at jazzflyte@gmail.com. If you've enjoyed this interview and would like to hear some more, all you got to do is subscribe and you get the other 80 interviews that we've done, whether it's Gerald Albright, Kirk Whalum, blah, blah. It goes on and on. Rebecca J. Hopefully we'll get Jessy J with the help of Mr. Valley here. Man, this was fun. All right, guys, thank you very much. And we'll join us again next week on the Jazz Flyte Podcast. Thank you for tuning in to the Jazz Flyte Podcast. I hope you enjoy these stories and soulful melodies that grew through the doors of time. If you want to stay connected with the latest updates and episodes, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell. Until next time, I'm Daryl Scott.